right, good afternoon, everybody. I'm David Huff, CPA, bringing you the December 8th, 2023 edition of News from the Front Lines of Business by DW Huff Consulting, where we like to help our small business owners and investors to build, grow, and enjoy their wealth. So here we are, another week has passed us, and a couple observations real quick on the IRS side of things. No crazy deadlines coming up, but there is some news that came out this past week regarding some extra expense some taxpayers may be noticing, and it has to do with underpayment of taxes. So as we know, as we go along through the course of the year, the IRS likes to get their money on a kind of a regular basis, right? So whether it's withholding from a job, from a paycheck, or estimated payments that you make every quarter, they kind of want that tax money throughout the year. So if you end up filing a tax return and owing more than $1,000, they go back and they add some interest onto the penalties. And actually, in some other cases, even without owing $1,000 or more, sometimes they do go back and add interest. So particularly affects the self-employed people or people that have income sources from real estate or things that aren't handled on a W-2. But the interest rate now for that type of underpayment interest and penalty is now going to be 8%, and it's up from the current amount of 3%. So, in COVID years, that amount was reduced a bit. And it wasn't very noticeable in most cases where we noticed people did have an underpayment, but now that we've gone up to 8%, I think most people will feel that a little bit more. So, kind of put a little more emphasis on making sure you got enough tax paid in kind of evenly throughout the year. So it becomes a little bit more important now. All right, so weekly observation. So, we always talking to people all week long with tax and various financial things. This is a podcast I saw, a blog I saw recently from Morgan Housel. And deals with, he talked about the topic of being frugal versus independent. So this is the guy that wrote the book Psychology of Money, and I guess a lot of what he talks about has to do with, I guess, when is enough, right? So, and how much of that can affect your happiness, because there are several examples he gives throughout the course of his writings where billionaires or with yachts and expensive houses all over the world commit suicide. They're not happy, so they got all this money, all this fame, and everything's going on along with it, and are still less happy than the guy that's living in one house in a more modest lifestyle. So he gives us a couple examples here, and a couple old guys that recently passed away. 82-year-old man. He's living in a trailer park. But when he passes away, he leaves $3.8 million as a charitable bequest to his town. And they describe the guy as just, riding around all day, cutting the grass in the trailer park on his rod and lawnmower, and just as happy as can be. And then they give another example, this other guy who's a janitor in a similar situation, not earning a ton of money, but unexpectedly leaves a lot to these charitable causes. So when we look at these guys in hindsight, the question here that Mr. Hansel is trying to, bring to the forefront is, were these guys cheap to the point where they were unhappy? And we really don't know that, because I guess without knowing these gentlemen in more detail, we can't really say for sure. But it seems, based on these discussions they had with people who've known these two men, that they were happy as can be. So living their more modest lifestyle and having an excess of money to give away was fine. So, I guess it goes back to managing expectations and knowing when to have enough, and then ultimately that will provide you the financial independence I think we're all looking for. So, and that could be at a much lower income level if you're happy and you're doing what you want to do all day long. So I'll throw that thought out there too. And naturally, we never want to discourage anybody from trying to save some tax and make some more money and have their investments grow, but we don't want to increase our cost of living so much that it makes us miserable. So, all right, so Dave Ramsey again, debt snowball strategy, and I wanted to talk a little bit about it, and if whether or not that is a good way to pay down credit card debt. So the reason why I bring this up is, in participate in a lot of networking groups and things like that with small business owners. And recently, another business owner had a situation with an American Express credit card. So they had multiple cards, but one of the cards in particular was a business use card. Had a $7,500 limit on it, which was over the past 6 months or so was close to the limit. And, this person made the payment, so it never defaulted or had any kind of bad derogatory events happen. But recently, within the last week or so, things improved to the point where he was able to pay the card off. Pays the card off, $7,500 of a balance, pays it down to zero, and American Express reduced his credit line down to $1,000. So this has happened in the past too. COVID, I remember seeing a few people have this problem with American Express in particular, but also I think Citibank is another one that's come up in some of the discussions I've seen. But some particular companies, even though you're making your payments on time and you think you're doing good, they, in times of, I guess, economic uncertainty, they are sometimes prone to reduce credit limits whenever they can. And that was the case here. So now that it's happening, and I haven't noticed anybody mentioning this before, so it seems like it's maybe American Express is seeing something on the horizon that's indicating we're in for some sort of a recession or something. Maybe not as bad as COVID, but definitely a bit of a downturn, and they're reducing these credit lines. So the reason why I bring it up though is this debt snowball. So in the past, I thought it was an okay way to handle things. And what it basically involves is if you have, say, 5 credit cards, like I do in this example here, it may seem overwhelming to try and get all 5 of them paid down. So what Dave Ramsey and others have suggested is that you go and you look at, you list everything out, pick the lowest balance card, and you just throw everything at that one card until it's down to zero. You make the minimum payments everywhere else. So obviously you don't want to incur any kind of late fees or whatever, and then move on to the next card. So so it's easy to implement, it's easy to understand, it's easy than trying to figure out and balance interest rates and all other things that could play into, I guess, a more optimized approach. And because it's so easy to do, people have had success with it. But the cons are, definitely you may be incurring more interest, because if you're looking at just the card with the lowest balance, potentially the other cards may have a higher interest rate. So you could end up paying more interest in the long run while you're working yourself through this plan. So yeah, so for those reasons I like it. But I guess a side note that's not mentioned here though is that when you do that, you run the risk of a credit card issuer reducing your credit line. So in the case of that example we talked about the business with the Amex card, so if you'd have paid off all his cards at a similar rate, that American Express card might have only gone down by $1,000 or $2,000 instead of the full $7,500 that he owed, and perhaps American Express would not have bothered lowering the credit line by $2,000 when maybe it would have been a small enough decrease that they wouldn't have done that to him. So so the debt snowball kind of leaves you, I guess, vulnerable to that, because if you pay one card down to nothing and it had a balance on it for a while, and you are in a time that the credit card issuer considers to be a time of economic uncertainty or recession, you might find that happening. So, and also another reason I like it too is I like to have multiple ways to tap into my credit lines when I need to. So, if you have one card completely paid down and the rest of them all have 70% balance on it, that hurts your credit score. And then when you have to draw them again, if you run up the other card that is now paid off up to a higher percentage, that hurts your credit score pretty bad, versus spreading it out evenly amongst other cards, where in total, let's say the utilization might only be like 50%. That doesn't hurt you as bad as even one card being at 90% or 70%, some higher bracket there. So consider that. The debt snowball, it's okay, but I really don't think it's the best way, but it's an okay way. All right, and the last point for this week here is regarding building up your wealth if you don't want to deal with real estate. So if you don't want to be a landlord, how do you go about building up your assets? And so look, I did take a look at Taylor Swift. So getting ready for this discussion here, we've seen her in the news obviously lately. and she's was rumored to be a billionaire, but as it turns out, she's only worth about 800 million right now. So, so as you look at which some key facts here about Miss Swift is she's earned about 150 million bucks in the I guess ticket sales from the touring and that kind of thing. She has 150 million in real estate, so $800 million net worth, 150 of it's in real estate. I think most people would consider her to be very wealthy, but she didn't get there by real estate, right? So I guess that's the point of my discussion, is that you don't have to use real estate, right? So although we definitely see that amongst our client base, where most everybody that has a substantial amount of wealth has either got it through real estate investing or has maintained it by investing in real estate. However, it's not mandatory, right? So, because of the fact that when you own rental real estate, you can use leverage and bank loans and other people's money to kind of acquire more of this type of thing. If you choose to not go down that path, it could be a little bit more time consuming if you're just relying on your regular Wall Street type investment account, right? So, but the second point I guess I would want to highlight is that regular investing and focusing on your finances is really the primary indicator of success. So we've seen people have success both ways, whether they own a business that makes money or had a good job or whatever, but by, I guess, taking the time to look at the numbers and really kind of focus on them and put your best effort into making some investment choices, even if it's not the most optimal choice, just focusing is important. That's what we've seen. People who focus on it, a lot of different ways to get there. There's a lot of different success avenues there. And when talking about real estate in specific, that third point I have is that you can also have exposure to real estate, like corporate type portfolios, through a real estate investment trust. So the REIT is the acronym there, and those types of investments are available in any brokerage account or mutual fund out there will have some REIT investments, and they'll typically hold commercial office space. I've got one big one I see a lot that gets a lot of coverage lately. They own all the land that Walgreens leases there from. So Walgreens, they operate all over the place, but they don't have a lot of real estate holdings. They basically lease those locations for financial reasons. So there are REITs that own that property and lease to those kind of grade A kind of tenants. So we that's another option where you don't have to actually have an apartment complex somewhere. You can invest in a REIT and still get that same type of economic gain. So there's that. So anyway, so back to that. So Taylor Swift has some real estate, but not the majority of her holdings, and doesn't have to be. It's not the only way to get there. All right, so that's it. So my closing thought for the week. I have a picture here of a happy dog. That's not my dog, but I was waking up this morning, getting ready to head into work. The dogs are at 6 o'clock in the morning, 5:30 as it is most days. Waking up, ready to eat some breakfast, very, very happy and excited about the day. I just kind of envy that. So I always look to my dogs. They're happy all the time, and they don't think about things too much and let things get to them. And they eat and they go back to sleep. And anyway, so that's my closing thought for today. Be happy. All right. So with that, we'll wish everybody has a great weekend. Also got some decent weather on tap here in South Louisiana. And enjoy yourself, and we'll see you out here next week.
Yeah.